Well, first let me say led by the President, the Democrats are in full retreat on the D.C. Criminal law issue. Washington is different from any other city in America. Our constituents come here, our staff lives here, all of you live here. We need to have a reasonable expectation of security here in the Capitol. And I think what was tried by the D.C. City Council is a correct time for federal intervention to protect our constituents and our staff. With regard to the presentation on Fox News last night, I want to associate myself entirely with the opinion of the chief of the Capitol Police about what happened on January 6th.
Well, there isn't hardly a day goes by here in this city when there isn't a violent crime. And if you look at this year already, there have been 99 carjackings, and the number of cars stolen is double what it was this time a year ago. And it's not just car theft. Violent crime is up 25% year over year here in Washington, D.C. And this is an issue that cries out for a solution. And I think that anybody who, as the leader said, works here, lives here, visits here, would like to have a community that is safe. And this isn't just unique to Washington, D.C. From cities across this country, from New York to Seattle, you see particularly a lot of our populated areas around the country are experiencing this same wave of crime as a result of soft on crime policies. And so this has got to stop. We have a constitutional authority, legislative authority here over the District of Columbia, and we're going to exercise that this week. As the leader pointed out, the resolution that will be on the floor here very soon tomorrow is one that I think will enjoy broad bipartisan support, because the Democrats have recognized what we all know and what the American people know, and that is that you can't continue to have policies where politicians basically put politics ahead of public safety, where you've got prosecutors who are not putting people away, and an environment that is permissive and encourages this type of criminal activity in a lot of our major cities across this country. So we're going to make that statement tomorrow, and again, I believe it will be a big bipartisan vote, and it should be, because the message needs to be sent clearly to the American people that policymakers here in Washington, D.C., that their elected officials get this and understand how important it is that there be a strong response to the wave of crime that's been experienced across this country, and that we intend to do something about it, starting with Washington, D.C.
Over the weekend, I was able to get out and about across Iowa. I was able to do a meeting with the Sheraton Chamber of Commerce and small business owners. I did a farm bill roundtable with a number of stakeholders that were interested in conservation. So a number of activities, and hearing from Iowans. In particular, at the town hall that I did in Jasper County, there was one constituent that stepped up and said he felt like the big hands of government were all over Middle America. And he's not wrong, folks. If we look at this administration and their overly burdensome regulations that are being pumped out from so many of our federal agencies, we would understand the feelings of this individual and many of the other folks that came out to the town hall. You can see it in whatever the Democrats and President Biden are doing. Everything from the waters of the United States being pushed out by our EPA all the way over to politicizing individuals' retirement accounts. There are so many regulations out there that are impacting everyday Americans' lives, and they're tired of it. They're very tired of it. And so it's good to see that finally some of the Democrats that are here in our Senate chambers are starting to wake up to the pressures that this administration is putting on our daily American lives. I just continue to encourage our Democratic colleagues to step up, take a look at what these burdensome regulations are doing to their constituents, and join us in a number of pushing back with these CRAs. So again, overly burdensome regulations out there. It's putting too much pressure on Middle America.
I want to kind of piggyback on what Joni was saying about overburdensome regulations. I'm ranking member on Environment and Public Works. I have 49 Republicans on a measure to take down this administration and the EPA's Waters of the U.S. Regulation that they put out. And we are looking to our friends over on the House side who passed a Congressional Review Act to take that regulation down. They passed it out of committee last week. We're expecting them to pass it out on Friday out of the full House, and we will have it on the floor here on the following week. So several of you have asked me, and I expect it to pass on the Senate floor. Well, the President has issued a notice of veto. And so why do this? I said, well, first of all, is he going to stick by what he says? We don't know. We saw what happened last week or this week. And so I think that's a logical question. The second reason is because it's the right thing to do. They are rewriting laws. There's a pending court case at the Supreme Court right now that's going to make a lot of the determinations. Well, they couldn't wait for that. They had to redesignate waters that had never been designated waters of the U.S. It hurts farmers, ranchers, developers, miners, anybody who wants to expand their footprint. It will make much more regulatory burden on the folks that Joni met with last weekend, and all the way from the individual all the way to larger entities. So this, again, I think, is the voice of the majority. The voice of the majority of the representation here in the United States Senate and House, reflecting the country in its entirety, is going to tell the President, stop with the overregulation, the overburdensome rules that you put forward, and let's get back to some reasonable, accomplishable rules and regulations so we can move forward. Thanks.
When I'm back home in Montana, the top concern I hear about is fentanyl, drugs flooding across from the southern border into states like Montana. I also hear a lot about inflation, the price of gas, the price of groceries. Montanans are feeling the consequences, certainly, of Bidenflation. But another direct consequence, as we heard today in the Banking Committee when Chairman Jay Powell was before us, is this reckless spending that we saw unleashed by the Democrats over the last 2 years is causing inflation and now the soaring cost of servicing our national debt. In February, the CBO updated their next 10-year forecast, and over the next 10 years, the dollars spent by the federal government on servicing the debt, on interest, will exceed the total dollars spent on defense. I remember when I was first running for the U.S. House back in 2012, I remember quoting the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Mullen, who back then said, and I quote, "The most significant threat to our national security is our debt." I think he was prophetic, because this gets us into trouble as China is increasing defense spending every single year and strapping our future generations with loads of debt is irresponsible, it's dangerous, it is a threat to our national security. We need to bring back fiscal sanity to Washington, D.C.
Given that you agree with the Capitol Police's very serious concerns about the release of this footage, was it a mistake by Speaker McCarthy to give access to Tucker Carlson of this security footage?
My concern is how it was depicted, which is a different issue. Clearly, the chief of the Capitol Police, in my view, correctly describes what most of us witnessed firsthand on January 6th. So that's my reaction to it. It was a mistake, in my view, for Fox News to depict this in a way that's completely at variance with what our chief law enforcement official here at the Capitol thinks.
Mr. Leader,
If that's the case, following up on what Lonnie said, Tucker Carlson has already teased another round of videos that are going to be released today. I understand that you're upset with the way that Fox is depicting it, but he's been forecasting this for months, asking for this access to this footage to have a presentation just like this. Was it a mistake for the speaker to hand that over?
You guys know I have many faults, but one of them is not answering the question in a way that I don't want to answer it. I've given you the answer.
Mr. Leader,
Why do you think there are some within your party who don't want to acknowledge January 6th as an attack or an insurrection?
Shall I give you the same answer again?
Leader McConnell,
Mr.
You
Leader,
want to ask me something different?
Do you have any reaction to President Biden proposing a 5% Medicare surtax to extend the solvency of Medicare?
Well, you know, the president's budget is replete with what they would do if they could. Thank goodness the House is Republican. Massive tax increases, more spending, all of which the American people can thank the Republican House for, will not see the light of day.
Leader McConnell, Leader McConnell.
Leader McConnell?
Maybe one day he'll be Mr. MR like he's Mr. Coupe. It's pretty good. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, one and all. I'm proud to be joined by Senators Murray, Whitehouse, and Carper. Now, we had a great lunch, and we covered an array of topics about what's shaping up to be an exciting week, and we're all excited about the President's budget and the contrast it will show with Republicans. But first on Fox News. Now, I have to address this because it's been weighing on me, and it intensified after seeing Tucker Carlson last night. Last night, Fox News, with Speaker McCarthy as a willing, capable, and powerful accomplice, aired one of the most shameful hours we have ever seen in the entire history of cable television. Tucker Carlson is a propagandist publicly pretending to be a newsman. We know that Fox News knows, that Rupert Murdoch knows, and that he knows that they're liars. that they're propagandists, that they're destroying America for some kind of monetary or other advantage. We've heard in federal court that he's paid by Fox News, that Rupert Murdoch specifically has asked them to promote a particular point of view regardless of the facts. This man didn't just embrace the big lie. He was one of the loudest voices perpetuating it. Chief cook and bottle washer of the big lie after Donald Trump. All the while knowing it was a big lie. What has happened to any standards of honor, of honesty, of decency in America when this happens? With that contempt for facts and knowing full well that he was lying to America, Tucker Carlson ran a lengthy segment last night arguing the January 6th Capitol attack was not a violent insurrection, an attempt to rewrite history and erode the very foundation of our precious and sometimes fragile democracy. So yes, this morning I am furious. Millions of Americans are furious. I was here on January 6th. Many of you saw the footage as I ran for my life, coming within a few feet of these criminals on that day. My staff was here. Many of you were here. I don't think I've ever seen a primetime cable news anchor manipulate his viewers the way Carlson did last night. I don't think I've ever seen an anchor treat the American people and American democracy with such complete disdain. And Speaker McCarthy's decision to share security footage with Fox, it looked like a mistake from the very beginning, but now it looks like a catastrophic disaster. It's all the more shameful because Speaker McCarthy knows damn well what kind of customer Mr. Carlson is. McCarthy's not at all surprised about this outcome, and he probably even feels no remorse. Even more shameful. Remember, this is the same man whose own lawyers admitted in federal court that he should not be taken seriously, saying Carlson's statements cannot reasonably be interpreted as facts. This man, this certified liar, was giving unyielding and dangerous power to one of our nation's darkest days by Rupert Murdoch and the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Astonishing. Last night was a low point for Fox News. It was a low point for Rupert Murdoch. It was a low point for Speaker McCarthy, and devastating for our democracy. And yet these lies continue tonight. Rupert Murdoch, who has admitted they were lies and said he regretted it, has a special obligation to stop Tucker Carlson from going on tonight now that he's seen how he has perverted and slimed the truth, and from letting him go on again and again and again. Not because their views deserve such opprobrium, but because our democracy depends on it. A couple more quick issues. This week, Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw will come before the Senate to testify in front of the EPW committee regarding one of the worst derailments in our country's history. I want to know, one, why Norfolk Southern spent years pushing the federal government to roll back safety regulations. Two, why they laid off thousands of workers while reporting $3 billion in profits last year. Three, and why they launched a $10 billion stock buyback program last year rather than upgrading safety equipment. Though I will let Senator Carper talk more about this during the hearing, I would be remiss not to mention the years of rollbacks Republicans have made at the behest of industry and corporate greed. The list is a long one, from rolling back inspection regulations, brake maintenance, attempting to deregulate train crew size, and nullifying a rule that would have implemented vital safety programs. Republicans have pushed efforts to promote self-regulation, leaving safety up to the whims of free markets and profit-hungry railroad executives, allowing more hazardous material without proper oversight across the U.S., and encouraging automation of track inspection at the expense of safety. We need answers, we need change, and we're not going to stop. And finally, on the budget, lastly, this week we're expecting President's budget to lay out his plan to invest in America, lower costs for families, protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicare, all the while reducing the budget. I anticipate the President's budget will address what Americans care most about, extending Medicare's solvency by 25 years, beyond 2050 without costing a penny in benefits. That is great. Americans are going to love to hear that. Reducing out-of-pocket costs for prescription drugs and mental health care for seniors. Lowering the deficit by $2 trillion and doing it by making the billionaires and big corporations pay their fair share. We continue to wait and wait and wait for Speaker McCarthy's plan on debt ceiling. We'll be showing our plan not only to cut the deficit, but to continue to deliver to the American people. Senator Murray.
Well, thank you. You know, I always say a budget is a statement of values, and I know that President Biden will draw a sharp contrast with the extreme slash and burn rhetoric that we are seeing from House Republicans. I expect President Biden's budget to show his values are where they've always been, with American families. I expect him to be focused on the questions that I hear from folks back in Washington State, like how can we keep our country safe? How can we stay competitive? And how do we give every family a fair shot to succeed and every kid a brighter future? Now, I'm glad some Republicans have acknowledged that maintaining strong defense investments is important, but let's get one thing straight right now. That is literally only half the equation. There is a really straightforward reason we have historically maintained parity with defense and non-defense discretionary spending increases, and that is because these programs are directly related to every single one of those questions I just mentioned. I mean, ask any family if they feel safe and secure without knowing that they have clean drinking water, without being confident that their food and drugs are safe. Ask parents if they feel secure when they are forced to choose between putting food on the table or getting medical care. Ask people if they feel safe without firefighters or police officers in their communities or a well-staffed hospital nearby for an emergency. And when it comes to competing with our adversaries on the world stage, we just cannot get the job done if we don't invest in Main Street, small businesses, and our farmers as well. And we cannot compete if we aren't investing to win the clean energy race and further reduce our need for foreign oil. We can't compete if we don't invest in our kids and make sure all of them can get a great public education and pursue their higher education goals. And we obviously cannot compete if we don't invest in our American workers, those ones that we need to build those new roads and bridges and to make all those new semiconductors. That means giving them a pathway to new careers and making sure they can afford homes where they work. And if I've said it once, I've said it a million times, that absolutely includes child care. That newly paved road to that new manufacturing plan won't do working parents any good if they don't have reliable child care. The bottom line, we all want a strong country, and that starts with having strong families and communities. And I'm sure the President's budget will show that. Here in the Senate, we are working. We are going to be working to move our spending bills forward in a bipartisan, timely, responsible way that meets the needs of our families and communities. That means holding hearings and markups and bills on the Senate floor. And you better believe the Appropriations Committee is going to be darn busy. With that, I will turn it over to Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman Murray. On Thursday, President Biden will deliver his FY 2024 budget request, which will represent his stated values to build our economy from the bottom up and the middle out. This will be a sharp contrast with Republicans who have made their values clear, even if they keep their numbers secret. They're here for the well-off and the well-connected, the big special interests who fund their party through a dark money armada of billionaire front groups. Their priority is protecting the Trump tax giveaways for mega donors, tax cheats, and big corporations sending jobs abroad, while attacking programs key to people's well-being in red and blue states alike. They've made clear they don't value healthy families and healthy kids. They want to cut housing in half, slash child care, cut affordable access to food, and kick millions off health insurance. They don't value U.S. workers and new economic opportunity. They want to reduce job training and make it harder to afford college and pay back student loans. They don't value seniors' dignity in retirement. They want to end Medicaid and Social Security as we know it. They don't even value public safety and national security. They want to undermine U.S. competitiveness with China, cut funding for law enforcement, and furlough Border Patrol agents. And for their fossil fuel overlords, they want to cut investments in renewables, slash investments in affordable energy, and pull funding from infrastructure. Republicans will defend a corrupt tax code that protects tax avoiders and tax evaders and billionaires who pay lower tax rates than teachers and firefighters. The Biden budget will honor his promise not to raise taxes on those making less than $400,000 and ask the wealthy to pay a fair share. We expect the president's budget to bring down the deficit by $2 trillion. By contrast, Republicans ran up the debt by trillions when Trump was president. All their caterwauling about red ink and wokeness is a smokescreen for an extremist MAGA agenda that serves their creepy billionaire elite, not American families. If MAGA Republicans leveled with the American people about what they're really up to, they'd be sent home in a heartbeat. Democrats have nothing to hide, and you'll see that in the president's budget.
Senator Carper. Thank you. Chairman of the EPW committee has Sheldon is chairman of the budget.
When our leader, Chuck Schumer, and I were in grade school, one of our favorite TV shows was the FBI. And there was a recurring, yes, there you go, recurring figure in the FBI. His name was Friday. And he would knock on the doors to interrogate folks about a particular crime. And if a woman answered the door and started talking to him, he would say, "Just the facts, ma'am, just the facts." And I think
that was Dragnet.
Oh, okay. All right. My mind is faded. But anyway, you got it. Just the facts. What we're interested in, Senator Shelley and I are interested in is the facts, just the facts. And for me, I believe it or not, I grew up in, my sister and I were born in West Virginia. We actually went to grade school in Ohio. Later on, I'd come back to Ohio when we graduated from high school, and I would be a student at Ohio State as Navy ROTC midshipman right in the middle of the Vietnam War. A lot of my friends were from Ohio, from East Palestine on the east over to Springfield on the west. And they were my friends, but they're somebody's neighbors. And my colleagues have heard many times point to the golden rule: treat other people the way we want to be treated. And I think part of what Shelley and I want to do is make sure that folks who've been harmed, make sure that folks whose livelihood is threatened, whose homes are devalued, we want to make sure that we put ourselves in their shoes and treat them the way we'd want to be treated. For myself, I want to find out what happened, what went wrong. I want to find out what could have been done to have avoided this disaster. I want to make sure that we find out what we need to do in order to ensure in the future it doesn't occur. I'm proud of the EPA. EPA was on site literally within hours of the incident. They've been back again and again and again. They have an ongoing presence. There's been a good cooperative relationship between EPA Federal and EPA Ohio. I was on the phone this morning with the governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, with whom we actually served for many years in the House, to get a feel for, as a chief executive of Ohio, how does he feel about the way the folks at Norfolk Southern have responded? Have they been responsive? Have been responsible? And to get his points of view. We have a hearing on Thursday. Tomorrow, Shelley and I do a press conference. We have a hearing on at I think it's 10 o'clock on Thursday morning in EPW, bipartisan hearing. We'll hear from 8 witnesses, 3 members of the Senate. We'll hear from the CEO of Norfolk Southern. We'll hear from EPA and a couple of other witnesses. And the idea here is just to get to the facts. What went wrong? What do we need to fix it? And what can we do to make sure it doesn't happen again? The last thing I would say to this is if we had any idea how much hazardous material is moving throughout this country today, by rail, by road, by pipeline, we'd probably be amazed. And we need to be mindful that the threats are posed not just by the hazardous materials that might be moved by rail, but there are threats in these other venues and these other methods of transportation. And that's a story for another day. Right now, we're going to work on railroads, and focus on railroads, and make sure that the people that have been harmed, the people whose livelihood has been impaired, who frankly are scared, to make sure that we treat them the way we'd want to be treated. Thank you.
Okay, questions? Nanu, MR.
On the D.C. crime bill, the White House last month said that they opposed this Republican resolution to block the crime laws. 173 House Democrats voted against it. Now a lot of their members and Joe Biden support this resolution. How are you going to vote? And secondly, how did Democratic leaders and the White House so badly bungle this issue?
I'm going to vote yes. It was a close question, but on balance, I'm voting yes.
So how did you guys manage?
Next. Go ahead. I think the best way to solve this problem is in a bipartisan solution. That's the only way it's worked. At the end of last year, Senators Sinema and Tillis were coming together on a bipartisan solution that was getting support. I'm encouraging them to do it again. Ultimately, the only answer is comprehensive immigration reform, something I would very much like to see happen. Yes?
Senator Warner has legislation that would restrict access to TikTok without pinpointing the company. Are you supportive of it? Is it something you'd move this year?
He told me about it. I haven't seen it yet, so I can't yet comment. Yes?
Mr. Leader?
Howard Schultz coming forth before the Senate. What questions do you have for him regarding unionization efforts?
Well, look, I believe in unionization, and I would hope that people would ask questions about why he believes unionization is not good for his company. It's good for America, and it's good for most companies. Yes?
Do you have any concern that Biden's 5% Medicare surtax could hit any upper middle class people in wealthier areas in New York? And are there any other Medicare reforms you would support?
Well, look, as Biden has said, no one below $400,000, which is, I don't know what percentile it is, but it's a very high percentile, is going to pay a single increase in taxes.
Schumer, has the caucus discussed recently the Garcetti nomination, which is coming up before the committee, and have you decided how you will vote on it?
No, look, it still hasn't come up in committee. We're hoping it'll come up soon. Thank you, everybody.